Geographics.
Yeah, but you absolutely cool.
That nigga said geographics. Shut the fuck up.
What class is that? Geographics? Yeah, I didn't go to that kid. Yeah.
No, but you're absolutely correct.
Even with the sound,
Yeah.
like in the album, there's a song. It's like, to me, that's the Sonic. That's the Bay Area right there.
But that's all West Coast. When, when people say West Coast, they just think of LA.
LA, Southern California.
South Central, Compton, you know what I'm saying? Long Beach. That's not just the coast goes all the way up to Canada. So when you look at you know, the Bay and what they represent, like, and then it's always been separate there too.
Yeah. Right.
Southern California, Northern California, two different planets.
Right.
But now it's this thing like
The W.
everybody.
Right.
Yeah, the W.
Everybody. And it feels dope to be able to see, you know, E40 do the opening for the pop-up concert.
that was dope.
And it's like the inclusion of it, just feels so we feeling strong right now.
Because I felt like, you know, I'm sorry to bounce all over the place, but like New York, we've always had Long Island, and we've always had Yonkers and Jersey, which technically isn't New York, but it is New York. You understand what I'm saying? So I felt like that moment for y'all, like it was like every part of the coast, and not only that. I mean, I was about to say the other state, but not only that, y'all brought the coast together. That's what's crazy. You know what's crazy?
You know what's funny? Because he's comparing New York, you know, Jersey, Yonkers to like West Coast, and I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can really do that in this particular way because, yes, New York is New York, and you know, Yonkers is a part of that. Jersey, you can see that as a part of that. Philly is like a distant cousin, but they're kind of, I see them as, I mean, Philly is kind of far, but because it's so close, it kind of, they feel like a cousin. You know, I would not call Philly New York, but to me, New York, Philly, DC, I consider that all the East Coast, bro. You know, because we're so close and because we're literally on the East Coast. But when people are talking about the East Coast, they don't usually mean DC and they don't usually mean Philly. So when he said this, right? He said this, okay. Hi, 11:11. It's 11:11 on the clock in the video. When he said this, because New Yorkers don't really fuck with Yonkers. I'm sorry. New Yorkers don't really fuck with Long Island. I'm sorry. Like, when people talk about New York, there is not unity in New York in the way there is on the West Coast. In the West Coast, I feel like when people throw their W's up, they mean it. Okay? They mean it. It's like, yes, the West Coast. When people say the East Coast, they mean the 5 boroughs. Sorry, they mean the 5 boroughs. And sometimes they only mean 4. Like, they don't really always include Long Island, right? I feel like Wu-Tang did a lot to, like, bring Long Island into the forefront of, like, people really loving Long Island or respecting Long Island. But New York does not consider Yonkers a part of New York. Like, let's be fucking honest. New York does not consider Jersey a part of New York. You live in Jersey, you're probably going to get clowned. You live in Yonkers, you're probably going to get clowned. And it might be like good-natured joshing, whatever. But I know because I lived in Jersey, bro. Like, people don't really see Jersey. It's like a begrudging inclusion. But it's like, nah, that's Jersey. Do you know what I mean? The distinction is there. And it's not as much for Yonkers, but it's there for Yonkers as well. So when you say East Coast, people typically mean the 5 boroughs. And more specifically, they mean their borough above all others, but they really mean the 5 boroughs. And they really are talking about more so when it comes to hip hop. Self-reflection is key.
When people say West Coast, they just think of LA.
Yes.
Or they think of South Central, Compton, you know what I'm saying? Long Beach. That's not just the coast goes all the way up to Canada. So when you look at you know, the
all
Bay
the way up
and what they represent, like, and then it's always been separate there too.
Yeah. Right.
Southern California, Northern California, two different planets.
Right.
But now it's this thing like
The W.
everybody.
Right. Yeah, the W.
Everybody. And it feels dope to be able to see, you know, E40 do the opening for the pop-up concert.
That was dope.
And it's like the inclusion of it just feels so we feeling strong right now.
Because I felt like, you know, I'm sorry to bounce all over the place, but like New York, we've always had Long Island, and we've always had Yonkers and Jersey, which technically isn't New York. But it is New York. You understand what I'm saying? So I felt like that moment for y'all, like it was like every part of the coast, and not only that, I mean, I was about to say out of state, but not only that.
Yeah, I don't think that comparison makes sense. Because I think California is definitely regional, you know what I'm saying, in the sense that you love where you're from, you rock that, you rep that. Yes. And the East Coast I think is quite similar. New York is quite similar. But you cannot say, "Oh yeah, Sacramento, Oakland, Compton, like San Diego, like San Francisco, like Long Island, not Long Island, Long Beach." Like, you can't just say all of those cities back to back and say, yeah, that's all West Coast, and then compare it and say, yeah, the five boroughs, Jersey, Yonkers. Yeah, no, you cannot make that comparison, because the way the West Coast identifies itself and the way the East Coast identifies itself are very different. West Coast, there is a sense of unity, right? I think part of that unity comes from, I feel like the history of hip hop is kind of like, everything that's not New York is not hip hop enough. So I feel like West Coast folks were like, if they're not fucking with us, we sure as fuck are gonna fuck with ourselves. So I think that that's a part of it historically, in terms of when you're talking about hip hop, why like the West Coast is so like down for each other. Part of it is like, the East Coast was playing like, this is my ball. Hip hop is my ball. Okay. This is mine. Okay. You're a visitor. Like, that's the energy. That's been the energy for some time, whether people want to admit it or not, or be explicit about it or not. Like, it is. You've got to either you're gonna be like, you gotta rep where the fuck you from. You doing hip hop? Are you gonna try to kiss a fucking East Coast person's ass who may or may not respect you because of where the fuck you're from? Or are you gonna link up with the people on your coast? So I think that feeling of hip hop belonging to New York more than anywhere else, because that's where it's originated, I think that contributed to the West Coast being more insular and really, really fucking with each other heavy, right? That's one. Secondly, in general, New Yorkers do not claim Yonkers or Jersey. Let's not be ridiculous, okay? New Yorkers barely claim fucking Long Island, and I'm right, okay? So you cannot compare the unity of the West Coast and say, oh yeah, on the East Coast it's like, the five boroughs and Yonkers and Jersey. No, I lived in Jersey for many years, and I lived in Jersey for several years. I lived in New York for many years, right? People look at you as separate if you're from Jersey. Like, it's always going to be a running joke. It's always going to be like, you're from Jersey. It's always going to be, you live in Jersey. It's always going to be that energy of, you're on the outside. I don't give a fuck. Ain't nobody claiming Jersey as a New Yorker. Stop fucking lying. Jersey is always seen, whether you want to say, oh, we're just joking, that's just good-natured joshing, whatever you want to call it, bitch, all right? There is not a unity in, when you talk about New York, people really are talking about Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island. And that Long Island is barely there. Wu-Tang being from Long Island, from Strong Island, that's definitely giving Strong Island like some energy to be like, yo, and Long Island folks don't give a fuck. Like, Long Island is like, we're Long Island, fuck you. If you don't fuck with us, we don't fuck with you. Like, that's the energy of Long Island, I'm telling you. But if we're being honest and talking about hip hop, people not really claiming Long Island like that, just like they're not really claiming Yonkers like that, and they're not really claiming Jersey like that, especially when it comes to hip hop. When was the last time somebody was talking about New York hip hop and they was talking to you about somebody from Yonkers or Jersey, bro? They're not talking about those motherfuckers. They're talking about people from Southside Jamaica, Queens, bro. Talking about somebody from South Bronx. They're talking about somebody from maybe Harlem. Talking about somebody from Brooklyn, Flatbush. You feel me? Canarsie. Like, they talking about somebody from Bed-Stuy. People ain't throwing up or talking about Jersey, bro. They ain't talking about, oh, I'm from Yonkers. That's not really the majority of what people are talking about when they're referencing New York hip hop. Is Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and parts of Manhattan specifically. Harlem, Sugar Hill, maybe El Barrio, maybe. That's what people are talking about. There is no unity on the East Coast. There's unity within boroughs, maybe. But there's not really unity like we are New York. This is New York hip hop. No, there's more unity in boroughs, like within your own borough, and maybe like Brooklyn, Queens. You know, people have a begrudging acceptance of each other or respect of each other, but there's still like, whatever Jersey, whatever Yonkers. The love that West Coast folks have for their coast, whether or not they have personal beef with a hood or a person, is not comparable to the East Coast. The love that West Coast people have for the West Coast is comparable to the love that maybe somebody in Brooklyn has for Brooklyn, or somebody in Queens has for Queens. People's love on the East Coast, is more borough centric, and people's love on the West Coast, yeah, they're gonna rep their set, but there's a West Coast energy of we rep where we're from specifically, and we rep where we're from in general, which is the West Coast, and I don't see that on the East Coast. It is not comparable. You not gonna sit up here on Drink Champs and act like New Yorkers really consider Yonkers and Jersey folks on the same level of New York as somebody from motherfucking Flatbush or fucking Queens or motherfucking the South Bronx. Please do not get up here and lie, bro.
Y'all brought the coast together. That's what's crazy. You know what's crazy about West Coast culture? If you actually pay attention, you guys don't gotta promote to the South or the East at all. You guys could just promote in the West, and you'll be good.
Well, here's the thing.
Sacramento.
The number.
Remember when...
According to the numbers, I'm saying.
Remember when hip-hop was super regional, and you look at the No Limit...
I'm going to say, that's the beat.
People had to promote in their regions. If you were waiting for somebody from another region to fucking respect you and listen to your slang and not make fun of your accent, you're going to be waiting for a long time, babes. It is what it is. There's been a lot of discrimination against like non-New York fucking artists, even if it's just like they ain't hip hop, they ain't real. Why you sound so fucking country? Like, why do you think people don't talk about like certain Southern rappers or Midwest rappers who really have had huge motherfucking runs? Why don't we ever talk about Bone Thugs and Harmony, bitch? People barely talk about No Limit. You talking about female rappers? You talking about rappers who are women? Y'all don't really talk about Trina as much as you should, given her impact on hip hop, period, especially as somebody coming from Florida with that, I believe she's from Miami, that Miami sound. Why are you not talking about, what's this woman's name? Ooh, girl, the Southern female. She is Southern rapper. I think she passed away recently. Girl, excuse me. Gangster Boo. Princess and Diamond of Crime Mob. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Okay? These are rappers, even when we're talking about, we're talking about rappers. Like, why don't we mention these people? Every day, Little Kim. Yes. And I'm going to be honest with you. We need to talk about Little Kim even more. Okay? Because iconic. And we need to talk about other people as well. Part of the reason why you hear about Little Kim, but you don't really hear about Trina or Missy Elliott or Gangsta Boo or Princess and Diamond of Crime Mob, is because Little Kim is a New Yorker. She's from Brooklyn, baby. Okay? She's a New Yorker. So because she's a New Yorker, you hear about her more, because hip-hop is biased towards New York. Because that's where it came from. However, hip-hop has expanded to a lot of places regionally. And it's important that we talk about New York as the birthplace of hip-hop. And it's also important that we talk about, important artists all throughout hip-hop, like that have... Is my microphone off? Hold on. Thank you. Let me put my microphone in the right place. It's important that we talk about influential people regardless of where they were raised, regardless of where they popped, regardless of where their influence is seen, right? Like, we need to talk about more people, and we don't hear about a lot of rappers simply because of where they're from. If Trina was a New York rapper, in these conversations where people talk about female rappers, Trina's name would come up more. Trina's name comes up a lot, but I don't really think it comes up enough. I'm gonna be honest with you. She's had a huge impact to this day. You know what I mean? Like Missy Elliott as well, from Virginia. Somebody who, as an artist, is one of the most iconic and important hip-hop artists, irrespective of gender. Missy Elliott was doing things in her music videos that niggas still haven't figured out how to do today, and that's facts. She was looking futuristic. We are now in the future, and her shit from 20 years ago still looks like it's from 1,000 years from now. Missy is that girl. Why don't we hear about her more? I bet you if she was from motherfucking Queens or Brooklyn, you would hear about her more. Okay? And even Little Kim, who's from New York, and Foxy Brown, who's from New York, you hear about them when we talk about hip hop, but not enough. We do not talk in depth enough about their impact to this day. So I'm just saying we need to really appreciate the diversity of artists, of talent that hip hop has birthed all over the world. But if you want to just talk about US, like regionally in the US, we have so many different regions that have birthed so many brilliant artists, and it would behoove us to actually speak about their contribution so we can have a real deep, nuanced understanding of where hip hop is today. That's all.